Welcome to the Referee POV podcast. Today we have James Spencer as my guest. He is a fellow referee. I've worked with James for a number of years, although he looks younger than me, but has actually refereed longer than me. So I'll let him tell you about it, but I'm excited to have him on the podcast. So James, welcome. Thanks for joining.
Well, thank you for inviting me, Brian.
Absolutely. We will, so if you don't mind, let me ask you, just give a quick introduction of yourself, what you do, how long you've been refereeing, all that kind of stuff. I know just from talking to you that you've got quite an extensive resume. So yeah, tell me about yourself.
Sure. So my name is James Spencer. I turned 40 years old, day before yesterday.
Nice.
In my regular life, I am an engineer and a lawyer and a real estate investor.
Wow.
I started refereeing when I was 13 years old. I remember I would be a volunteer linesman on my brother's games. He was playing in the under 7, and so they had a center referee, but they asked for volunteer linesmen.
Wow.
I really enjoyed doing the volunteer linesman, and the local youth soccer organization was desperate for referees, and so they were trying to sign people up, and if you agreed to take the course and passed it, and would agree to referee the youth games, they paid for your course and they paid for all of your uniform.
Oh wow!
Flags and everything. So I said, okay, this sounds like a good deal because I really enjoyed doing it.
Yeah.
That was 27 years ago.
Lots changed.
Here I am still doing it today.
Quite a bit has changed. I don't think they pay for your uniforms these days.
Probably not.
No.
Of course, back then we only had to have one shirt.
Yeah.
And one pair of socks because everything was black.
Really? Okay, so they didn't have any colors or anything.
There were no colors. Referees wore black shorts, black socks, black shirt, and that was it. And no teams were allowed to wear black, so it was very easy. I remember the first time they introduced a new color, it was a fuchsia color. Sometime I think in the late 90s, and so we had fuchsia and we had black.
Okay.
And I still have it. I still keep the fuchsia jersey in my bag so I can show people how old I am and how long I've been refereeing.
Really? Well, I think they have that color over in Europe or maybe in the Spanish leagues or something like that.
They probably do. They have every color under the sun nowadays.
Fuchsia color. Interesting. So, wow. Okay. So you got into it, so I didn't do the math, but it's got to be close to 20 plus years that you've been doing this?
27 years.
Okay. All right. And you got started with your brother. So as you started out, did you ever have a goal for refereeing? I mean, I know for a lot of people, and especially with you, I mean, you're an engineer, you're an attorney. Did you ever have a goal for refereeing, or was this just something that you did on the side?
I never really had a particular goal. I was never one of those people who did refereeing and say, well, I want to be an MLS referee or a FIFA referee. You know, I did refereeing because I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And I particularly enjoy the challenge of trying to manage a game. And I always say, as a referee, you're in the customer service industry.
Okay.
And I like to walk away from a game and leave, a satisfied customer.
Right.
So
okay.
I certainly, one of the things about doing refereeing for the challenge portion of it is, in order to get a bigger challenge, you have to gain better skills to do higher level matches.
Right.
So I guess from my standpoint, a lot of it was trying to increase my skills, my knowledge of the game, my experience, so that I could do better in higher level matches, which were more and more challenging.
Right.
And I was fortunate along the way to get to do a lot of, interesting and high level matches and travel a lot of interesting places.
Wow.
But I actually, I got to the point where I could go national and probably be on the MLS track where I could go to law school. And I said, well, I like refereeing, but I don't want to make a career out of it. So I chose law school over refereeing.
Okay.
And I'm happy with my decision.
Well, and let's tell people a little bit about this system because it's changed and they've changed some of the naming conventions. But in the past, this was called, I think they had multiple levels, and they used like a grade 9 or a grade 7 or a grade 6.
Right.
And in that system, a 7 was equal to like doing high level youth games.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, and I think they moved
Everyone
to like a
started at a
seven.
grade 8.
Yeah, and so then as a 7 plus, you could do adult games, and you had a certification to do. And then like a 6 was considered what, a state referee?
Right.
Okay. As a state referee, and then we'll switch over to the other terms. As a state referee, what could you do, and what were you certified to be able to do?
Say that one more time.
As a state referee, you had, because you're a state referee now. You're an emeritus, right?
Correct.
Which is a big long word to basically say you've been a state referee for a long time, and so they figure you're never going to lose those skills. So you're officially a state referee forever.
Sort of grandfathered in.
Yes, exactly. So from a standpoint of a state referee, does that mean you can do college games? Does it mean you can do semi-pro games? I mean, what does that mean?
So as a state referee, and I got as high as a level 5, which is right below national, and those were sort of considered national level candidates.
Okay.
State level referees can do anything up to and including MLS games.
Oh, wow.
You will probably see from time to time maybe some preseason games on TV where you will see someone with a state level badge on the field.
Wow.
Most of mine was more semi-pro,
Okay.
PDL type games,
Yep.
Division 2, Division 3. You could also do, back when MLS had they had a reserve system. So each they sort of had their first team, which was the ones that you knew about, and then they sort of had a reserve system, which were the players that were on the team but maybe weren't good enough to make it into the lineup for game day.
Okay.
So you could do those, and then pretty much anything and everything else. College has its own separate system of qualifications, and generally that is by invitation only.
Oh, interesting.
I did referee. They call them NYSOA referees, but it's NCAA referees.
Okay.
But there are various chapters around the country, and then they invite generally only state referees to do that.
Okay, but that's by invitation only.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Interesting. So, and I think the translation of those now is a grassroots referee is a 6 or a 7, and a regional referee is the 6 now. Correct?
I know my badge says regional referee now. I haven't really kept up. They've changed the numbers and the grades and everything so many times that I recertify, and whatever badge they give me is the one I walk out on the field with.
Perfect. So we had one of the MLS referees on a previous podcast who was one of the new referees, and he was actually the UPSL, I think UPL, UPSL, USL referee of the year. And he was telling me a little bit about the system that really, once you get to a regional referee, that's kind of a state level, you're invited into the next levels. That's something where, similar to college, you have to be invited to be a national candidate, correct? Which is what you were.
I think you can declare to be a national candidate.
Okay.
So you need to be a regional referee in order to be considered a national candidate. And nowadays too, used to be you could become a national referee, and you were a national referee sort of overall. You could do pretty much any matches.
Okay.
Now they have bifurcated the system where if you want to be a national referee, you have to choose a track. You can either go national referee who's a center referee, or a national referee who is an assistant referee. So they want people to focus on one or the other. It's a lot easier to become a national assistant referee. As you might expect, there's two assistant referees for every referee.
Right.
So a lot of the people now are opting to do assistant referees so they can still do professional matches, and have a much better chance of moving up into that grade. But it's a very difficult life to do if you want to move up into those really upper echelons. I have a number of friends who are former MLS referees. One of the guys I came up with in Austin, his name is Ismail El-Fat, and he's a FIFA referee now, and he referees the MLS Cup final and CONCACAF games and things like that. But it's very difficult on your time and your family and things like that, because you are essentially a full-time referee once you get up to the national and FIFA level.
And that's a lot of travel, from what I understand.
It is.
Okay. So shifting a little bit, you've been doing this a long time. if you had to give advice to someone that's just getting into refereeing, what would that advice be?
I would say don't let yourself get down by the naysayers and the complainers.
Okay.
Um, Although we are in the customer service industry, you can expect pretty much any call that you make, whether it's for a throw in or a goal kick or a penalty kick or a red card, it's not going to make somebody happy.
Yes.
So you can't go into refereeing and think that you're doing this and that everyone's going to like you. So if you're that type of person that you want everyone to like you, refereeing is very difficult.
Yes.
You have to expect the fact that people are going to disagree with you. And the most important thing really for referee is showing confidence. So it's a great way to build self-esteem for a lot of people who are starting out and coming up, because you have to be confident in your skills and confident that you made the right call, because there's always going to be somebody out there who disagrees with you, and they'll tell you.
Yes.
But don't get discouraged. Don't lose sight of what you're doing. It is a challenge. And if you can get past that, refereeing is a very satisfying, you could say, profession, and it's a lot of fun. I mean, I do referee for the fun. I like to do it.
I found the same thing. I mean, when I started, I got into it because my son played, and I had never done, I didn't know anything about soccer up until about 6 years ago, and so it was a great place to be in the action. You could be on the field. It's one of the best seats in the house. It's a great choice to become a referee. From a standpoint on youth, so focusing, because I focus a lot on trying to recruit youth into referees, which is hard. But what would you advise specifically a youth referee? I know same type thing, make sure you're confident, things like this, but anything specifically to youth referees?
Okay, I lost a couple of your words there at the end. Could you speak up a little bit?
Yeah, sorry about that. So youth referees, I know that the advice is kind of the same thing. You want to have confidence and you want to be confident in your calls. But as say teenagers are getting into this, is there anything specifically you can talk to them around what you would recommend?
Sure. I would say, don't jump into the deep end too quickly.
Okay.
Particularly teenage referees, they get their first games, they get their new badge, and a lot of times they're doing younger players, the 7, 8, 9, 10-year-olds. And they think, man, I really want to be doing, the 16-year-olds, the 15-year-olds, the higher level things, sometimes what we might consider the more interesting, the more challenging games.
Right.
But if you move up too quickly and you do jump in the deep end, there's more risk and there's more reward. So those players are much more difficult to handle. The game management skills that you need take longer to develop. And so I started out refereeing, 6-year-olds.
Yeah.
And then I moved up to the under 10s where I was doing 9 and 10-year-olds. And then I moved up to under 12s and I did, 11 and 12-year-olds. And over time, you develop those skills and the habits that you need, and you can adjust as you move up. But if you try to start out refereeing high school kids and, you're a little unsure of some of the rules or, what's the difference between a foul in this part of the field or this part of the game, it can be difficult to adjust.
Yeah.
So don't be too quick to want to jump in and do the, exciting games. Everyone thinks after 6 months they're ready to jump in and do a professional men's match. But it takes a little longer to sort of get your feet underneath you and then work your way up.
And that's a good point. Refereeing is fairly complicated because you've got 3 different mechanics. I mean, there's much more, but the 3 that I've thought about sometimes is you've got to manage the players and manage the gameplay. You've got to understand all the rules and exactly how to enforce those rules. And then you've got to manage things like the mechanics of the time and the coaches and the players and things like this. Do you see one of those areas that may be more challenging for youth referees than the other? Or is the challenge coordinating all of them?
I think the challenge is coordinating all of them. Mm-hmm. Most referees, for the most part, know the rules. A lot of us have been players, or we have kids that have played, and so we a lot of us have a pretty good understanding of the rules.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the more challenging aspect is, when do you apply those rules and when don't you, in terms of, when is a push, um,
Yeah.
in a 6-year-old's game as opposed to a 16-year-old's game. Those are going to be different. And then also, for instance, in the younger age groups, managing perhaps the expectations of the parents and the coaches is a lot more challenging than the players. The
Mm-hmm.
players will do whatever you tell them to do, because they're used to acknowledging and respecting authority.
Yeah, they're
And
6-year-olds.
when you get to 17-year-olds, the parents a lot of times don't even come to the games. Their kids drive themselves to the games, and they're excited and hot-headed, and you don't have to worry about the parents or the coaches on the sidelines. It's the players you've got to manage.
Yeah. Yeah.
And really, as you get higher up in the higher levels, it becomes more and more about game management and less about actually applying the rules or managing sort of the outside aspects of the game. And if you can manage the players sort of with your personality and the way that you sort of adjust and let the game flow, you'll generally, the other things will sort of take care of themselves.
So, okay, managing players, that's an interesting thought. How do you manage players, or what do you find is a good key to that game management?
Well, you kind of want to start at the beginning of the game, and you don't want to do anything to piss off the players or the coaches before the game even starts.
Right, right.
There are a lot of referees who like to referee because it gives them a sense of power and authority.
Okay.
And in order to have a good sort of working relationship with the participants in the match, I'm not saying that you need everyone to like you, but you want everyone to sort of respect you and think, he's a good guy. And even if I disagree with him, he's doing his best, and he gets most of it right, so we'll go along with that. So, it varies from game to game. Sometimes it's just, being nice and introducing yourself to the players and the coaches beforehand. Sometimes it's joking around with the players. The other day there was a player who he got injured on the field in a JV match, and he was cramping up.
Yeah.
And as they were carrying him off the field, I jokingly said, "Man, give him a deep tissue massage and some acupuncture, and he'll be ready to come back."
Yeah. Yeah.
They all kind of laughed and moved on, and it kept the game sort of light in a more serious situation.
Yeah.
And the player sort of knew, okay, this is a referee that he's not uptight. He knows how to enjoy the game. We can work with him.
Yeah.
And then also, I would say being open to the players and their concerns and sometimes their complaints.
Okay.
Telling a player that they're wrong, even if they are, is not going to win you any friends on the field.
Right.
If a player comes to me and is complaining that I missed a call or I'm not calling something, I'll usually either explain to them, the rule, or I might say, look, I missed it. I didn't see any pushing or something like that. I'll watch for it.
Mm-hmm.
Or tell me who is holding you and give me the number, and then I can watch for it the next time. And obviously you're not changing your call, but they understand that you have heard them. And a lot of times that's all that the players, and a lot of times the coaches too, is they want to know that they're being heard, and that you're taking their input into account.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily have to act on it.
Right.
But it gives them the sense and the sort of the calming patience that, okay, this isn't a referee who's just going to do it on his own. He'll listen to me. And I think that's really important to establishing a good relationship with sort of the players, the coaches, and the other participants.
Yeah, and it takes it out of the realm of, or at least somewhere it's an adversarial, the referees are against the teams or against the coaches, or there's a battle between there. It's more, we're working together to make sure we're getting the calls right. Okay, another question for you. So this is more of a practical application, but what happens when you get a call wrong and you know it was wrong? How do you react? Do you just try to push forward? How do you handle a situation where you've gotten a call wrong?
Well, it depends on a lot of factors, in terms of the game dynamics and what type of call you got wrong.
Okay.
So for instance, if it's a real easy call, right? Like say you point the wrong direction on a throw in,
Right.
right? Or as soon as you give the direction for the throw in, you realize that everyone else thinks it's the other way.
Right.
I usually just change my call and say, my bad, it's this way.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. Yeah.
you can do that too on a foul. I've done that where I pointed the wrong direction, like, what? What did I do? And you're like, oh, sorry.
Sorry.
I meant to go this way.
Yeah. Yeah.
If it's the type of call where maybe it was a close call and maybe you called a foul where maybe it was a little too soft or something like that, you just need to project confidence and sell it.
Okay.
Right? I've made the call. I'm not going to change it going forward. If there's a situation where you didn't make a call, and it seems like everyone seems to agree that you were wrong, you didn't call a penalty kick, or something happened, and you didn't see what happened, but everyone seems to think that a card should be issued. In those types of situations, I will usually stop the game and I will go over and talk to the nearest assistant referee. And it could be, just to ask them about the weather, or something else, so that it looks like I'm doing my due diligence and consulting a second set of eyes.
Yeah. Yeah.
It could also be that, let's say, for instance, there's a penalty, what is a potential penalty kick.
Yeah.
And it's the type of situation where I have missed something and I'm pretty sure I've missed it, right? I'll go over to the assistant referee, talk to him, and then come back and call the penalty kick. And you can say, look, yeah, the assistant referee saw it. The referee, I was blocked. I didn't see the handball, whatever. I talked to him. He said it was a clear handball penalty kick. It's taken care of. Or if he gets back and he says, nope, I didn't see it either, or whatever, then you can go forward with the game. But at least you have, again, shown the players that you have listened to their concerns. You've consulted with somebody else who had a different angle. And if nothing else, they feel like you're trying to get it right. And that's really what they want,
Right.
Get it right, most of the time. And if you don't, try the best you can to perhaps get different input from other officials. But if they give you the same input, then you say, hey, I checked and he didn't see what you saw.
And we're good.
Got to go forward from there.
Yeah, and again, that mirrors that confidence of being able to be comfortable enough within yourself to say, yes, I'm comfortable to know that I made a mistake too, or I didn't see something. So that's fine. Things move on.
I would also tell you, and this is something that a lot of referees, I think, make a mistake with. If there is a mistake that is a very obvious mistake, do not try to act like you're right and that everyone else is wrong. The best way to do that is to admit that you have made a mistake.
Yeah.
And then go from there. I remember I had a game once where basically I was down near the end line on like a corner kick, and ball came out and everyone sort of moved out, and they passed the ball back in, and the guy forward was clearly 3 yards behind everyone else.
Yeah.
But my linesman, I could see him on the far side, and he wasn't in position with the second to last defender, and I was in great position. And this guy trapped it and was basically about to shoot into the back of the net, and I called the offside, only to realize that one of the defenders was still on the post behind me, and I hadn't seen him. And that was the big problem there. And of course, the coach and the players just went nuts because this would have been, I think it would have made the game 2-1 if he'd scored or something.
Okay,
and
so it would have given them the lead. Yeah.
But I blew it. I didn't see the guy over here. Totally my mistake, but there's nothing I can do about it. All I can do is drop the ball for a bad whistle.
Yep.
And that's what I did. And at the end of the game, I didn't get anyone who complained, who said I was an awful referee. I actually got, wow, I've never seen a referee that admitted they got it wrong.
Right.
So if you get it, don't just fess up to it and do what you have to do to move forward and correct it if you can.
Yeah.
And you'll get a lot more respect from the participants in the game than if you just try to ignore it or pretend that like you didn't get it right.
Right. So, okay, you also hit on one thing that it reminded me. I wanted to also ask you. You talked about your linesman being out of position, and you talked about going over and talking to your linesman to consult on these type of things. Obviously, it's a team refereeing situation. What do you see as the most important thing to work within that team? Because I think you often think of the center referee as the person in charge and the person that's running things, and that may be the case, but there are two other referees that you're leveraging. So
I think
what's the yeah?
it's very important to make sure that your assistant referees are on the same page as the center referee in terms of what is their responsibilities and their authority on the field, and how do they work in coordination with the referee. So for instance, I always tell my assistant referees, they are to flag the ball over the touchline first, only on their half of the field. If
Yes.
it goes out on the other half of the field, I'm usually not even going to look at them because I'm usually closer to the play. And I
Yeah.
will usually signal without even looking at them. And then they just signal what I do. Same thing with goal kicks and corner kicks. If it's on their half of the goal line, I'll let them signal first because they generally have the best angle. But if it's on the far side of the field, I will make that decision. And so that helps avoid situations where the linesman makes one call and you're pointing the other direction.
Right. Right.
So we've established who sort of has responsibility in these areas. Same thing with fouls. I tell them, you know, in my game, I want you to flag the fouls that are within about 15 yards of the touch line on your
Okay.
half of the field,
Yep.
or in situations where you are closer to the ball than I am, and I can't see it. And so that establishes that, if the ball is 20 yards away from them and I'm 5 yards away and I miss it, they're not to call anything because I'm close enough that I should get that. But if I'm 40 yards away and there's a breakaway and they're
Yeah.
30 yards away and they see something, they can flag that and take care of it.
Yeah.
And that also avoids situations where, maybe you don't want to call something because you're close enough to see that it's not worth calling, and they're flagging over on the sidelines when they're 25 yards away and you're 10 yards away.
Yeah.
And you're kind of going, man, I really wish they wouldn't do that or put their flag down.
Right. Right. Right.
Same thing on other issues regarding penalty kicks or offside. I tell them, wait until the player touches the ball most of the time before you put the flag up, unless it's obvious that there's only one player who can get the ball.
Right. Right.
Otherwise, you might put the flag up too early, and then I've got to wave you down because the guy never actually played it, and a different player ran onto the ball. So
Right.
just
Right.
having that sort of communication pregame in terms of what are our expectations for who's going to call what, who's going to call it where, and who has the authority to do what.
And the other thing I've seen is invariably you're going to have very experienced referees as your linesmen. I mean, some situations not so much because especially if it may be like a youth referee, they're going to mainly do lines and they may not. But however, I mean, I've had games where you and I have worked together a set of three games where I'm the center on one, I'm the linesman on the next one where you're the center and vice versa. So typically you're going to have usually fairly experienced referees helping you, which is good because they're open to this type of conversation and open to listening. Okay, another shift a little bit. This is a question that I always ask every referee that I talk to is, tell me one thing that you love about refereeing and one thing that you wish you could change.
So I love the challenge most of all. I one of the reasons I became an engineer was because I liked problem solving.
Okay,
And refereeing is all about problem solving.
interesting.
How do you resolve, a situation where two players are ready to fight, and keep the game under control?
Yeah,
How do you keep the coaches from running onto the field from when they see a situation that they disagree with?
yeah, yeah,
There's a constant challenge of keeping the players grounded, keeping the fans grounded, and at the same time, staying out of the way as much as possible. I always say the best referee is the one that nobody remembers at the end of the game. You want them to remember that incredible save that great shot, for the winning goal, that wonderful slide tackle that saved the goal or something like that. You don't want
Exactly.
to remember, the referee blew this call, or the referee didn't do that, or he made this call and he carded the wrong person, that type of thing. You
Right,
don't,
right.
you want to walk off the field and everyone's congratulating the players on how well they played, and nobody remembers the calls the referee made, or what he was. You want to be the silent individual. Uh, One thing that I could change about the game, uh, I guess you could say, in general, I think. Well, let me give one rule that I would like to change.
Okay, good.
Uh, so the offside rule, where if you start onside and you come back onside to receive the ball, you're still offside. My position is the whole point of the offside rule is so that you're not camping out behind everyone.
Yeah.
And so if you receive the ball and you're back onside when you actually get the ball, then that purpose has been solved. And
Right.
it's a lot harder for linesmen too a lot of times, because they have to watch the players whether they get the ball on or offside. They still have to put up the flag. And I've always thought that's a rule that really serves no purpose, and it just frustrates the players, because again, when they get the ball, they're going, well, I've got three guys who are between me and the goal. Why am I being called offside? And it's because he was a half yard offside three
Right.
seconds ago when the ball was passed.
Right. So, which this dovetails perfectly into the other question I wanted to ask you, because in that situation, you've got a linesman trying to make the best call that they can and watching. We've got this wonderful thing called VAR. And so I wanted to ask your thoughts on VAR. What do you think about it? Because it's the same type of thing. I saw a match the other day where the linesman made a call and called the player offside, and they looked at it, and they lined it up and saw his toe was in the right position, so therefore it was okay. So, and they use lasers and they're using guidelines. What do you think about VAR just in general?
I'm not a big fan of VAR in terms of those sort of minute decisions.
Okay.
I think small things like offside and penalty kicks and things like that. I think you should leave those to the referees on the field.
Yeah.
Um, I'm a proponent of VAR for the things that the referee simply doesn't see. Right? Somebody whacks a guy with an elbow, um, you know, outside of the view of the referee, and nobody saw it because the ball was 20 yards up the field.
Right.
That's the
Right.
type of thing where there's no way that the referee could have seen it or anyone else, because they just weren't watching that area.
Yeah.
Same thing when you have, these things with penalty kicks. And in my opinion, I think it sort of lets the referee off the hook. Most referees now, particularly that have the advantage of VAR, they will not call the penalty kick. They will let the play continue, and then they will go back to VAR and look at it, and then they'll call the penalty kick once VAR has confirmed it. Same thing with cards. They're more likely to give a yellow card than a red card, and then let VAR review it, and then tell them that they should have given a red card, rather
So,
than saying, yeah, that was an obvious two-footed, cleats up tackle, you're
yeah.
gone.
So is that a
Uh,
good thing or a bad thing?
I think that's a bad thing. I would prefer, again. I think referees need to have confidence in their own calls, and if it's obviously VAR is useful for calls that are obviously wrong, and
Right.
that's what
Right.
it's supposed to be used for. The type of thing where the referee makes a penalty call, and it turns out that the guy was diving,
Yeah.
and it looked, everything from the referee's vantage point looked like he got tripped, but in reality he wasn't. Those are the calls you really need to get right. But the type of calls where, did he step on his foot? Did he not? We couldn't really tell. And so the referee basically sort of says, not my responsibility. I'm not going to call it. I'm going to let somebody else, in a booth with 16 different angles, take over that responsibility. Uh, I think it makes the referees a lot less confident in making those
I
hard
agree.
to hard to make calls. And I tend to say, in my position, I get paid the big bucks to make the hard decisions. And that's my responsibility. Is it a red card or is it a yellow card? Is it a penalty kick or is it not a penalty kick? And I'm the one who is charged with making that decision. It doesn't get to go to a panel of 3 or 4 people who can look at 5 different angles. It's
Yeah.
me.
Well,
So,
and it cuts down on the challenge. To your point about what you love about refereeing is it's a challenge. Well,
right.
if you're eliminating some of those difficult situations, I mean, those are the ones that you like to be able to take on because
Right.
it's a challenge. Right. Interesting. Okay. Okay, we've got about 2 or 3 more minutes. I appreciate you spending so much time with us. So another question that I typically wrap up with is, what is this craziest story or some story that you can tell me that was the craziest thing that's happened to you or moment that you've had as a referee?
All right. So I had a game probably over 20 years ago when I
Okay.
was probably in my teens, and I think I was refereeing a tournament at
Okay.
Bear Creek Park. And it was teen boys, probably 14, 15, 16-year olds, something like that.
Yeah.
And game was going along just fine. It was a rough, tough kind of a game. And all of a sudden, while the ball is in play, one of the parents, a father, gets out of his chair and marches onto the field straight at me. And everyone sort of stops and is going, "What is going on?" And I'm kind of going, "Oh my God, what?" To the other side of the field,
Hey,
to the
James, I'm sorry.
opposing
Let me
team.
stop you. Sorry, the video cut out just as you said. So he was
Oh,
walking up to you. So start there again. He was walking up to you.
all right. So he walked right up to me and walked right past me. Didn't say anything.
Okay.
Walked to the other side of the field to the opposing team's coach. It's the opposing team's coach brings him back onto the field, and we're still kind of going, what is going on here? Because no one's injured or anything like that. And he
Yeah.
walks over and he goes, "This guy over here just punched my son, right?" And I'm assuming, I don't know if it was a punch to the arm, a punch to the back, certainly didn't hit him in the face or anything like that.
Yeah.
And no
Yeah.
one had
Yeah.
said anything. And so the coach was like, "So, Michael, did you hit him?" And the kid was kind of like, "Yeah, but he pushed me first," or
Right.
something
Right.
like
Right.
that. And so the coach was like, "Okay, go ahead, ref." And so I gave the kid a red card, and the kid walked back with his coach to the sidelines as being ejected. The parent walked back to his folding chair, sat down, and we resumed the game, you know,
And like nothing
uh,
else.
like nothing else had happened. And again, it was the type
Wow.
of thing where it must have been off the ball. And of course, every parent watches their child very closely, but no
Right.
one else
Right.
had seen it. But it was apparently everyone agreed, and the kid admitted he'd done it, and so we gave him a red card, and parents sat back down, and we continued on. So
But
never
we
had anything
don't.
else like it.
We don't advise that happening now. We don't want parents coming on to to
Right.
do our job. But yes, wow, that is crazy. Uh, well, James, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking time. It's I know that some of the folks that subscribe to our channel are going to be super excited to see this. So we'll post it. As we wrap up, any questions or any final thoughts that you have as a referee giving advice to a young referee?
Well, I think I would just say that refereeing can be a very satisfying hobby and very lucrative for kids that are coming up. Um, you think about a lot of kids who want to get a job when they're in high school or in college to earn a little extra money, but they don't really have any sort of skills, and maybe they're making $10 or even $15 an hour. If you know the game of soccer, we're always short referees.
Yeah, yeah,
And with refereeing, even if you're doing a linesman, a lot of times you're making $20 a game. Maybe the middle you're making 30, $40 a game. And so it's a great way to make money. It's a great way to get outside and stay fit. You keep a great tan.
or a
And
sunburn.
you exercise and you have a lot of fun doing it. So I would encourage all of our listeners to stick with it and make sure you enjoy doing it. But it can be a lifelong hobby, or even a career for some if they want to go in that direction.
Perfect. Fantastic. I couldn't have said it better myself. James, thank you so much. It's James Spencer.
Thank
He's
you for inviting me.
my fellow referee, and I'm super excited that he came to join us on the podcast. Awesome.
All
Thanks,
right.
James.
We'll see you on the field.